talk about a little game called Duke Nukem Forever. Uh, where to begin? Jeez. I'll be referring to a little blog post that I wrote last night about it. Um, kind of reading from it, but throwing my own shit. Uh, Basically, before the game came out, I kind of I went out on a limb and I was like, I'm gonna buy this game no matter what the critics say, and I'll probably have fun with it. And it's not because I'm a huge fan of the series. It's because I actually didn't play the first one until a couple of years ago, or Duke Nukem 3D. It's not the first one, but I didn't play Duke Nukem 3D till a couple of years ago, and then I gave it a shot. I liked it a lot. I thought it was like Doom, but more fun. You had Y-axis aiming. I thought it was fine, and my thinking going into it was, uh, yeah, it's probably gonna have some problems. Being that it's been in development for more than a decade, it's probably gonna be dated. The humor could be off. The humor was my biggest worry, actually. But I was like, I like this type of shooter. Maybe it'll be kind of old school, kind of a break from like the Call of Duties that we get nowadays. To me, I was just like, I'm gonna have fun with this regardless. If it's a total train wreck, that'll be amusing to me. That was my thinking. I've beaten the game. I've played at least a couple hours of the multiplayer, and it's been a couple weeks now since I've touched it. I feel like I've digested it. I'm ready to share my thoughts. Put simply, I'm not here to defend the game. Really, I think it's a bad game. Um, but I don't think it's quite as bad as critics, kind of led people to believe. And I have problems with some of the common critiques of it, the common complaints. I thought some of them, I just didn't get it. I thought the reviews were kind of grandstanding, and like I said, lots of things that were pointed out that I didn't think were that bad. Um, but I mean, the game has real problems, and at many points, I agree with the critics wholeheartedly. I think the tech is obviously dated, embarrassing. It looks bad. Specifically the graphics. The enemy AI is really bad. You have this bad thing too, where like the pig cops will just kind of run at you, and they'll be like, a foot in front of your face, and you'll shoot them with the shotgun, and it doesn't register. They could be right in your face, and you'll be shooting them, and it doesn't register. Um, I think the load times are just unforgivable. They're frequent. They're ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about a minute load time for every little section of the level of load. Every time you die, it has to redo this. Um, a lot of things like the one of the things that Randy Pitchford and like Gearbox kind of played up going into the release was how it's interactive, and if you see a pool table, you could go play with it, or a pinball machine, you could go play with it. It's not as deep as advertised, and all of the mini games that I played were garbage. You would never want to play this version of pool. You would never want to play this version of pinball. It's just completely screwed. If that would be awesome if that stuff worked and was fun. Um, the multiplayer downright abysmal. It feels tacked on. It's laggy. None of it feels right. I don't know how the hell you even like shoot people, because like I'd be trying to shoot someone, they're moving around so much, somehow they would kill me. Maybe other people figured it out, but it's bad. It's really bad. Just really poor mechanics on the multiplayer. Um, the game, it's misogynistic to the point of being uncomfortable, and then it also like for some reason it adopts modern shooter conventions, which you were hoping, hey, it's gonna not feel completely dated and it's learned something from the last 10 years, but it adopts the ones it doesn't have to. It adopts things that don't fit the experience. that don't fit what I feel like a Duke game should be. I think the ones that it picks to adopt it hurts the game. Um, I'm thinking specifically not the ego meter, which is basically like the regenerating health. That's fine. I think I would rather have that, but the uh, the I don't know who made the decision to copy Halo and have Duke only carry two weapons at a time, but it's a bad idea. It doesn't work for the game in any way. It's kind of it's a step back from like this full arsenal of weapons you could cycle through in Duke Nukem 3D. Just kind of hinders the freedom and the fun of the combat. Um, I think like if you would have just had a little weapon wheel where you could choose from a bunch of weapons, that's all the innovation that they needed out of that. Instead of cycling through it, you could pull up a wheel, and choose it. Uh, the underwater level near the end of the game, you know, I agree. There should not be underwater levels in anything. I think the only underwater level I've played that I thought was really cool was the one in Alice Madness Returns, another underrated game. But anyways, that's kind of where I kind of part with the critics. I agree with them on all those points. The game has problems. Um, I thought that IGN's score was fair and accurate. They gave him a five. They gave the game a 5.5. And if I had to review the game, I would probably end up giving it that score, maybe a 6. Um, but I think that score would be misleading to people because I actually did have quite a bit of fun with the campaign. Um, Not saying that the campaign is great, but I had fun with it. Um, one of the strange complaints, one of the strangest I thought was that the game mocks other games, um, better games, while simultaneously copying those games. I don't understand why that's a problem. I don't think that like Duke Nukem Forever should have had the two weapon limit from Halo, but at the same time, I don't see how it's inherently wrong for it to make a joke about Halo and yet still copy Halo. I think that like Halo or the critics kind of like misread that as like Duke Nukem kind of making fun of games that were better than it when it was really I thought like homage to the games that it was copying. I mean, why else would it be copying those games and then make a joke at those games? If these are supposed to be serious jabs at like Halo or Half Life, why would the game copy those games? It just doesn't make sense to me. I thought that the jokes, like some of those jokes, were the best. I thought that the line where he's like, "Power armor is for pussies." I thought that was one of the better lines in the game. It didn't make me laugh. I wasn't like, "Ha ha ha," but I thought it was funny. Um, I liked when he says, "I hate Valve puzzles." It was that's I don't get like that was just to me. It's critics picking out something that seems really obvious, and it's an easy way for them to write the review, but it comes off as lazy to me. It's just like an easy way out, an easy way to take another jab at the game. It's just like they're condescendingly pointing out, "Oh, this game borrows from better games," and it mocks it at the same time. Like, you know, I think that it's just that's just not very clever on the critics' part. Um, when it comes to the humor, though, I will agree that it would work better if Duke was like presented as a sad relic of the '90s instead of like this alpha male that we're still supposed to think is really cool. I think it'd be funnier if only Duke thought he was cool and everyone else is just like, man, what's wrong with this guy? Um, it could be just as raunchy, but it would. I think the humor would work better that way. Definitely needed to cut down on the misogyny in the game and the way they present women. It's just there's you're walking a fine line with that. If they find a way to make it work, I don't know. It's just the way they treat women in the game is just not cool. Um, but more troubling than any of that, regarding what the critics uh, had to say about the game, I thought it was really, really troubling that like the majority of critics they attacked the game for having variety and not being a straightforward shooter. Um, they kind of argue that Duke should be all about shooting and blowing stuff up, and to me, it's like the same kind of like fuzzy nostalgia, like false nostalgia that you had and stuff where like people talk about like Sonic. It's like the game's all about speed. It's like no, Sonic like the speed was a big part of it, but there was also breaks in the speed with like traditional platforming, smart level design. And you go back and play Duke Nukem 3D, it was like a parody, like it was cutting edge parody of like the best shooters of its time, like Doom and Wolfenstein 3D. Like you shot stuff, but the levels were also these like sprawling mazes with secrets and dead ends, and there's keys and stuff you have to get. It was about exploring too. It wasn't just I'm just running around shooting. And I think it's just people like shows people they remember something in a way that it wasn't. And I think that Duke Nukem Forever is also a parody of games that were current when it was being made, which was 10 years ago. Um, so yeah, I mean, and like the things that they didn't like were, you know, they're like these are things that you don't see in modern shooters anymore because they don't work well in shooters, in first person shooters. And I was like, I love the non shooting portions of this game. They were the best parts. Um, there's enough shooters that don't have these things. I'd like having the driving and the platforming and the physics puzzles. Um, and they weren't like saying, "Oh, it's poorly done driving or poorly done platforming." They just were knocking them for existing at all. Like, you shouldn't have platforming in a first-person shooter because it just doesn't work. And I was like, "Well, really? I'm like, if they made another Metroid Prime, are you gonna say the same thing about that? If they make another Half-Life, are you gonna say they shouldn't have physics puzzles? Is Rage gonna lose, points in its score for featuring driving segments and a vehicle-based multiplayer? I doubt that, but if they're being consistent, that's what it would be. I just, it totally blew me away that like they're just like there shouldn't be platforming or puzzles in a first-person shooter. I was like, what? What was Portal 2? That was all puzzles. It was awesome. I don't think the puzzles are that great here, but there is awesome. I thought not awesome, but cool like platforming stuff. There's a level titled Duke Burger, which like you're a shrunken, like a miniaturized Duke going through a fast food restaurant. You're like jumping around the shelves and the stoves and stuff in the back room of a restaurant, trying to figure a way around it because the floor is electrified. And you have to figure out a way to turn off the electricity. That was awesome. I thought it was the best part of the game, best level in the game. I'd like to see more stuff like that, like in a sequel. So the fact that they were just like, you shouldn't have this stuff, I don't know. I don't agree with that at all. I thought that was the strength of the game was the variety in it and the fact that there was platforming and puzzles and even the driving was cool. I mean, there were some jumps. I like to go off, ramps. That's cool. And, anything but a straightforward run and gun shooter. I have plenty of options for that. I don't need that from Duke. But anyways, I mean, I didn't think that the game was going to be great. I, if you thought it would be great, I think people that thought it was going to be great are crazy. I mean, a lot of people just assumed it would be great because it spent more than a decade in development, but that's as foolish as thinking that a movie will be better because it's longer. It's just the game feels cobbled together over a decade. It feels like loosely assembled from all these different ideas from different people, and definitely I can't say it's a great game, but I did have fun with parts of the campaign. Um, and I just thought that the critics came down on it for weird reasons. I think that they knew it was bad and they knew that they were expected to think it sucked, but like they just went about it lazily, like picking on weird things. When you could just pick on the mechanics and the tech and the humor, like the misogyny and the humor. But it parodying Halo and Half Life and taking jabs at other games. So what if it's not as good as those games? I don't think it's bad that it like was a little bit of a homage in there. I don't know. I think the critics kind of did attack it for daring to be anything but a standard shooter when the market is flooded with standard shooters now. Um, I don't know. Like I said, not a great game, but I just thought some of the points that critics made were kind of weird. Um, that's about it.